Germany's Vice-Chancellor Lars Klingbeil has told Ukraine it can continue to rely on Berlin for support and that Russia's Vladimir Putin should have, quote, no illusions. Klingbeil, who is also finance minister, was speaking at the start of an unannounced trip to Kyiv. He called for a ceasefire and the need for reliable security guarantees. Now, Klingbeil's visit comes just after Russia and Ukraine exchanged more prisoners and Ukraine marked Independence Day.
A moment that some thought might never come. Ukrainian soldiers and their families are reunited after more than 3 years of war. Some were captured by Russia in the first weeks of the invasion.
For 3.5 years he was in captivity. We didn't know anything about him. We didn't see him. We only got a letter from him. One letter.
Along with the celebrations came stories of suffering and a reminder that many soldiers remain in enemy captivity, while some 70,000 Ukrainians are still registered as missing.
There were a lot of men there. The important thing is that the older people, those who have gone through a lot, they understood what was going on. The young ones, they often gave up. The main goal of the Russian authorities is to destroy us physically and morally, and they are quite successful. A lot of boys commit suicide, get traumatized. I do not want to talk about this on this holiday.
The release coincided with Ukraine's Independence Day. At a ceremony in Kyiv, President Volodymyr Zelensky said his country will never surrender its freedom.
Today, Ukraine celebrates Independence Day, fighting, defending itself against attacks and air raid alarms. And very importantly, we are strong and not alone. Every day we are pushing this war back to where it came from, to the Russian sky and Russian soil.
Standing alongside Zelensky was Canadian Prime Minister Nick Connolly on a visit to show his support.
Canada understands the lessons of history. We know that Putin can never be trusted. We know that true peace and security requires security guarantees for Ukraine.
Russian prisoners of war were also sent home. The swaps are the only agreement the two countries have yet reached. Despite recent leaders' summits and raised expectations, there's no sign of a peace deal coming anytime soon.
We're going to bring in our correspondent in Kyiv, Nick Connolly. Good morning to you, Nick. So as we hear, Germany's finance minister and Vice-Chancellor Lars Klingbeil, he's arrived in Kyiv, and our crucial issue remains the security guarantees for Ukraine and the role that the so-called coalition of the willing, which includes Germany, could play. Is there an expectation in Ukraine for more clarity on this soon?
Well, obviously, they would want some clear statement of German intent to send peacekeepers from Lars Klingbeil. That is unlikely to happen. He's so far avoided that issue, said that basically the question of German troops, boots on the ground in Ukraine, is basically not a question for now. It's not relevant yet. But certainly behind closed doors, there are going to be lots of talks, because it does seem like the Social Democrats, Lars Klingbeil's party, are a lot more sceptical on the idea of sending German troops here than Chancellor Merz, for instance. So that is kind of the big question behind closed doors. Right now, though, until any kind of ceasefire or any kind of situation in which peacekeepers would be needed, Ukraine needs money to keep on fighting. And obviously, as finance minister, he is crucial to that. He's already said that Germany will continue sending upwards of 8 billion euros in the next years in direct military support for Ukraine. But I think the Ukrainians are going to be telling him once again, you don't need to ask German taxpayers for this money. Just help us to confiscate the Russian assets that are held in Europe, that have been frozen so far but not confiscated, and that will pay for all the American weapons we need rather than going to your taxpayers. So I think that's going to be the line from his Ukrainian host today.
Right, and just going back to the talk of security guarantees, there have been lots of different suggestions about what these guarantees for Ukraine could look like. And what are you hearing there?
Well, we had Mark Carney, Canada's Prime Minister, in town yesterday, who refused to rule out the possibility of Canadian boots on the ground here in Ukraine. He, as all basically visitors to Kyiv recently, said the most important first-line defence was going to be the Ukrainian army and providing those troops with enough modern weapons, but he did not exclude the possibility of Canadian troops. And we've had similar kind of mutterings from other visitors here to Ukraine in the last few weeks. I think the question is, are they going to be on the front lines? Are they going to be maybe positioned kind of in places like Kyiv, where I am now, further away from front lines, as a kind of tripwire against another Russian attack? But certainly we had the NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte saying these guarantees have to ensure that Putin never again tries to take another square kilometre of Ukrainian territory. This definitely sounds more serious than what we heard in the past, not just some kind of paper guarantees, but actually huge kind of military financing and potentially a significant number of troops on the ground to actually make sure that this is Putin's last go at trying to take over this country.
All right, that's our Nick Connolly reporting for us there in Kyiv. Appreciate it. Thanks, Nick.